Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another live stream here. It's Thursday evening. Beautiful, beautiful day outside today. Little on the cold side, I think, but it turned out to be a really good day. And tomorrow is supposed to be even prettier with the highs of 80 and a low of only 59. That's almost, if it wasn't for the 59 part, that's almost shorts weather. So I'm like super happy about that. I don't think I need my headset because technically I'm not talking to anybody today, so I can leave it off. But if you have any Bible questions or anything like that, just drop them in the chat and we will cover those as exhaustively as needed. And besides that, I don't have too much going on tonight in terms of things that I'm just like itching to talk about. There's some things here and there in Hebrews 12 and in Exodus 19 that I wouldn't mind getting into, almost in kind of like a sermon prep study kind of situation. But whatever you think, we'll talk about it, discuss it, and cover it to our heart's desire. But yeah, it's been a pretty good day today. We had our Golden Ages class today, in which we do our Book of Galatians stuff. That's been pretty fun. The problem with it is I can't get the PDFs to upload to my website. I could probably figure it out if I really put the effort into it. But it's going to require me to pretty much rebuild some of the pages on my site, and I'm not digging that too much. But besides that, I've had a pretty decent day. Got some writing done for the Sand Mountain Reporter, which is a newspaper that I write for once a month. I wrote a little bit about Sabbath in there, and it's kind of like a preview of a sermon I'll be preaching in a couple weeks on April 10th. And let's see, what else? What did we do? What else did I do? I feel like there was something else. I was working on something on First and Second Kings and First and Second Chronicles about Manasseh, but I haven't finished that quite yet. I was working on it, and so I've been sending it to a friend of mine to read, and until I can finish it, I'm not gonna reveal any details about it. So that's still something in the works. Don't worry about it. Forget I said anything. But I was looking on the old interwebs today, and I was checking out some responses to a post I had made about marriage, divorce, and remarriage, and everybody loved it. Like, it was fantastic, except for the people who didn't. But that happens sometimes. But anyways, the question was, what is a valid reason for divorce? The thing about it is, of course, is Jesus says that from the beginning was never intended to be anything known as divorce. But given extenuating circumstances, it happens. It's just the reality of life. And so how do we as Christians deal with that when it inevitably and unfortunately does happen? So that's what the post was about. And I pointed out how in 1 Corinthians 6, Paul called the church of Corinth a bunch of adulterers. He said, such were some of you. And then he says in chapter 7 that if someone's been loosed from a wife and they remarry, they haven't sinned. So I pointed out how the Corinthian Gentiles who had no idea about the Jewish marriage customs and exceptions and the debates about what constituted a valid reason for divorce, having no understanding of that, would they be expected to conform to those standards after they became Christians? Or would they be expected to maintain those standards from that point forward? That is, could the blood of Jesus cleanse them of even those kinds of sins? So that's what we were talking about in the post, basically. And there's some people who believe that you have to have very specific reasons for being divorced, otherwise you can't remarry. And if you do want to remarry, you have to go back and marry the original spouse, not someone else. Which, when you look at Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 4, is actually against what the whole deal was there in the Old Testament context of marriage, divorce, and remarriage. But whatever, it's a complicated subject. And one of the problems that people have in any Bible discussion is making the assumption that it is way more cut and dry and simple than it actually is. There's always going to be some piece of historical evidence, some cultural thing, another passage, another group of passages, the context. Most discussions are far more complex than people want to give them credit for. And so through oversimplifying, they attempt to make the other person look dishonest or ignorant or stupid and say, it's so easy, just read it right here, when it's really not as easy as they suggest that it is. That's a problem in most Bible discussions, even dealing with stuff like prophecy. Like, when you're looking at it from your perspective, yeah, it's very simple, cut and dry. But we have to learn to listen to people and help them work through the complexity and admit that there is some complexity and it's not always as easy and as straightforward as we pretend that it is. And when we do that, we're giving the person credit for being honest. We're giving them credit for having a brain and being able to think through things themselves. And we're not just assuming that because they disagree with us, the obvious position, right, the obvious truth, that they must be a dishonest, false teacher who's trying to be a big fish in a little pond, or whatever lies we make up about them to make ourselves feel good about our doctrine and to make them feel not so good about theirs. So, anyways, the subject of marriage, divorce, and remarriage, and every other subject in Scripture, is not as simple as people want to make it seem that it is. And often the call for, or the desire to call something simple is to basically lift yourself up as being the smart person who got it and tear the other person down as being the dummy who couldn't understand. And we got to avoid doing that as Christians, because we need to give people, in most cases, the benefit of the doubt. There's way too much tradition and culture and previous understanding and presuppositions that someone has just to change their view at the drop of a hat. And if someone does change their view like that on a subject, they might not have put the work in to seriously consider what's going on and to make it their own anyways. And so you got to be careful with those kind of accusations. All right, we got 4 people here now. Anybody have any questions? Or if you notice that blue hair, I don't know if you can tell that or not. Kind of blue. I made a bet with my youth group, and they accomplished the goal. So I'll let them dye my hair blue. It didn't turn out like bright blue, but we probably would have tried harder had they hit the original goal. We had to amend it, and so we ended up with this. But you can kind of tell in the lights. It's kind of got a blue hue to it. Kind of cool. I'm going to keep it for 2 weeks, preaching it once, and then I'm going to make it back brown. So, anyways, very fun stuff. All right. Got any questions there? If not, I can show you what's been troubling me. What's been troubling me about 1st and 2nd Kings and 1st and 2nd Chronicles. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, we can. Oh boy, Josh. What's up, Josh? How's it going, brother? Was labeled a false teacher for even wanting to study. I know, man. They don't even want to study it with you. That's true. That's sad and it's true. I was told we don't ask those kinds of questions. So, that's tough. Sith Pop Wives. Jesus said, because the hardness of your hearts are most divorces because of this or adultery. Well, I mean, most divorces aren't about adultery. So, but if you actually look what Jesus says in Matthew 19, check it out here. Jesus says that because of the hardness of your heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it has not been this way. In other words, even divorcing for adultery falls under the hardness of your hearts. That's what Jesus says. Like, God never even designed for divorce to even be a thing, right? which of course our culture is so different from theirs that this whole discussion is, from a 21st century perspective, is just such a different beast, right? Like today, God forbid, Laura and I were to get a divorce. She has a, she has like a teaching degree and stuff, right? Like, Laura has a teaching degree. She can make 40 something $1,000 a year or whatever. She would be fine. But in the first century and beyond, for a husband to divorce his wife, that's a big deal. That's her a source of food and clothing and shelter being stripped away from her instantaneously. So when we talk about marriage, divorce, and remarriage, it's in a much different culture, much different social situation. Um, much different opportunities are afforded to women that were not afforded back in the early first century and everything. So the reason why Jesus is saying that, if you look back at this, let me blow it up for you. There we go. He says, all right. So they ask him, hey, why did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and send away? He said to them, because of the hardness of your heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it has not been this way. So even Jesus is like, guys, divorce was never supposed to be the plan, right? That's never supposed to be the plan. Look what he says. I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. Now, immorality is the word here. You'll see sexual immorality be suggested here, fornication be suggested here. Let's take a look at it here. Hang on a second. You gonna load? Hey, load. There we go. So, porneia is unlawful sexual intercourse, participation in prohibited degrees of marriage, immorality of a transcendent nature, which has to do with like polytheistic cult, as he talks about there. So, when you look at this whole deal in Matthew chapter 19:9, why is this? So you had these two schools of thought. One was they could divorce the wife for any cause. The other was they could divorce the wife for fornication. Jesus is talking less about universal standards for marriage, divorce, and remarriage, and more about really like a social justice kind of issue. Like, what would happen to the wife if he were to divorce her? And this way of, can he divorce his wife for any reason at all, is basically like, hey, if she burns the cooking and kick her out. But what would that do to the woman? This is more about protecting the woman than it is giving the man a right to divorce. What he's basically doing is trying to, not let these men just cut their wives off whenever, and basically force them into a position where they have to find another husband. It's kind of a social justice issue sort of thing. Hardness of your hearts could just mean refusal to reconcile. Well, in that culture, reconciliation again is not really as much of a thing, because all the power was in the hands of the husband, to kick the woman out, right? It's not like, the woman could just thrive on her own as easily as she can in our modern day. It's still not necessarily that easy, especially when you look at the cost of childcare and things like that. It's not as easy. So you have, the whole discussion here is about, divorcing a wife, not divorcing a husband, right? Again, the culture was that this is given here to protect the woman, to give her a, to get these men to not treat their wives like just a piece of meat, treat them as a companion, treat them as someone who deserves respect and deserves love. So it's less about Jesus taking away one legalistic standard and providing another legalistic standard, and give them and instead he's giving them a deeper insight to love and respect their wives, and not just to kick them out for any reason, and not to be seeking a reason to get rid of them. If they cheated on him, that's one thing. Jesus understands, but for the man, this was trying to give him more respect for the wife. Now, here's the other part about this. If Jesus is giving a universal standard in Matthew chapter 19, that is, in every situation, for all time, the only valid reason for marriage, divorce, and remarriage is fornication, then Jesus would be violating what he said in Matthew chapter 5, 17 through 20. He said, "Do not think that I came to destroy the prophets. I did not come to abolish I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass, not one jot or one tittle will pass from the law till all is accomplished. Whoever then annuls the least of these commandments and teach others to do the same will be called least of the kingdom of heaven. Whoever keeps and teaches them should be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say unto you, that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you shall in no wise enter the kingdom of heaven." Jesus says that he's not going to abolish the law, he's going to fulfill the law. He's not going to teach someone to break even the least commandment. So Matthew 5 is not Jesus giving a contract or a constitution for Christianity. He's properly interpreting the law in light of the traditions of the Pharisees and the scribes. So, that being said, if Jesus is giving a universal standard, the only valid reason for divorce is fornication, then what we have to consider is that Jesus would be contradicting passages like Exodus 21, 10 through 11, which says, "If he takes to himself another woman, he may not reduce her food, her clothing, or her conjugal rights. If he will not do these three things for her, then she shall go out for nothing without payment of money." This would cover instances of neglect, of abuse, right? The woman under the law did have more rights than people in churches today even give them. And of course, Jesus said his yoke is easy, burden is light. But look what we've done. We told a woman that if she's being abused, violently abused, then she should just stick it out and suffer just like Jesus did. And that's not even something that the law demanded of someone. Another passage would be like Ezra 9 and 10. Ezra 9 and 10. He says, "Let's make a covenant with our God to put away all the wives and their children, according to the counsel of my Lord, and of those who tremble at the commandment of our God. Let it be done according to the law." Now, notice, they're going to put away their wives according to the law. But why? Because they married foreign women. Not because they married, not because their wives cheated on them, but because they married foreign women. In other words, they were with a unbeliever, as the New Testament would call it in 1 Corinthians 7. So if Jesus is giving a universal standard for all time, he would be contradicting Ezra chapter 10, which says that according to the law, they could divorce a Gentile woman. And also Exodus 21, where according to the law, a wife who was being neglected by her husband could leave without payment. So you have, like I said, the issue is way more complex than we thought. Got another comment here. So you can teach falsehoods and enter the kingdom. Better to not and be called great in heaven. Greater righteousness than the Pharisees was meaning you have to have Christ and his righteousness. Yeah, that's one interpretation that I've taken before. That the righteousness is greater than that of the scribes and Pharisees because it was Christ's righteousness. But I think, and that is an interpretation that I've given on this YouTube channel, but I think that interpretation falls short. I think that okay, let me explain. Okay, we need paint. Hang on a second here. All right, let me get my. There we go. All right. Here's what we got. We have a verse, and I hope that you can see this. We have a verse. We have the chapter. We have the book. We have the author. We have the Testament. And we had the Bible. All right. Think of this as layers. Okay. And right here between like author and testament or whatever, you could probably put like sections of books, like the minor prophets, the major prophets, the law, the Psalms, apocalyptic literature, the Gospels, Paul's writings, whatever, general epistles, right? All right, so here's what you're doing when you're going to study a scripture. You start with a verse. The words, the phrases, the language, all those details. You don't skip to, and you can think of this as a tree, right? The Bible, like a family tree, like the Bible, the Testaments, the books are grouped up in different groups with authors intermingled there. So you start with a verse. You don't jump to another tree with another author, right? And another book, etc., 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 right? Like, for example, the gospel accounts. There's temptation to, you're reading something in Matthew. Oh, what's this? I've got to figure this out. Let me go to Luke, right? Because Luke talks about this. Okay, slow down. Slow down and first try to understand the passage, how it fits in within the chapter, then within the book, and that author's other writings. And then you can start looking at different books within the same genre or same groups of writings, like the Synoptic Gospels or like Paul's letters or whatever. And then you go to the Testaments, and then you can go to the whole Bible. So you follow this flowchart step by step because you want to give the passage, if you want to understand the passage in its original intention, you first need to try to understand it within its context, right? Now, eventually, you might need to go to a different book or a different author to assist in your interpretation of the passage or to enhance the interpretation of that passage, or maybe to further develop some ideas or whatever. But try to understand the verse within that book of the Bible before you go to another book. So, Matthew chapter 5. Unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees, you'll in no wise enter the kingdom of heaven. Now, you look at the word righteousness and you go, aha, righteousness. Oh man, Romans 4, imputed righteousness. Romans 8, Christ is our righteousness. He has fulfilled the righteous requirement of the law on our behalf. And then you go, bada bing, bada boom. Jesus is talking about imputed righteousness in Matthew 5. I get it. And that might be a valid interpretation at the end of the day. So I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying we can skip, right? If we skip one of these layers, what I was talking about, I'll put it back up there real quick. If we skip from a verse to another book, we might miss the original intention within that context. So what's the original intention? What do I mean by that? Let's take a look. Matthew chapter 5. What's up, Mark? How's it going, man? So, Matthew 5. What's Jesus' original intention? We start off with the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He ends it. Blessed are those who have been persecuted, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And then you see in verse 20, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. And then you see in Matthew 6:33, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. All these things will be added unto you. Then you look at Matthew 7:21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. All right, so the Sermon on the Mount is about preparing the Jewish people for the kingdom of heaven. How would he do that? by undoing the traditions and interpretations offered by the Pharisees that were contrary to the spirit and the emphasis of the kingdom of heaven. For example, take the Beatitudes. Blessed is the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Let's just reverse those three. And what you'll have is the gospel according to Rome, not the gospel according to Jesus. Instead of blessed are the poor in spirit, you might say blessed are the proud, blessed are the haughty, blessed are the mighty. Instead of those who mourn, blessed are those who blessed are those who have, or never have any problems or whatever. Instead of blessed are the gentle, you'd say blessed are the harsh, blessed are the strict, blessed are those who don't let anybody get into their way. And so you go through the Beatitudes and you can see what Jesus is doing is undoing conventional ideas about what the kingdom of heaven would be about, right? He's undoing their presuppositions about what God is all about. So when you go and he says, unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. This isn't a speech about imputed righteousness necessarily. What it's about is moving from letter of the law to the spirit of the law. That is the intention of the law. That is, God desires mercy, not sacrifice. Sabbath wasn't a ritualistic, legalistic day to keep for 24 hours just because, right? Just because, Sabbath was a way to give even the lower class person a break. The rich people, they got breaks. Give the lower class person a break. Give the animals a break. Give the fields a break. You look at the land Sabbaths. Allow the land Sabbaths, every 7 years. Anybody could get food off of any field, and any animal could get food off of any field because it was all given to the people by God, like the food was given to them in the wilderness. So the Sabbath wasn't about the 24-hour day. It wasn't because that day was better than the other days. It was about following a program of work and rest to give everybody a rest and to demonstrate what hyperdependence upon God looks like. So what Jesus is doing in the Sermon on the Mount is he's moving from the letter of the law to the purpose behind the law. For example, you shall not murder. Pat myself on the back. I've never murdered anybody. Yay me. I'm so glad I'm not like that publican over there who's a murderer, or whatever. But what is he? He takes it deeper. He says, no, this isn't about murder. This is about not being angry with your brother. You see? Or look at this. He says, what am I doing here? There's not breaks here, right? He says, you've heard it said you should not commit adultery. He says, it wasn't about committing adultery. I pat myself on the back. I've never cheated on my wife. Have I ever looked at somebody to lust after her? Have I ever undressed a woman with my eyes? Have I ever looked at a woman just as a piece of meat to use for my own pleasure or whatever? It's taking it from that surface level, pat yourself on the back, hey, I did it thing, to something that affects, way more people. Something that, and it's more about the attitude. It's more about the posture, the daily living, things that are practical. Let's see. You've heard the ancients were told, you should not make false vows. But Jesus says, don't make oath at all. It's not just about vows. Just say yes or no. Just get it done, right? Be that kind of person. So what Jesus is doing is he's saying, yes, your righteousness does need to exceed the scribes and the Pharisees. And it does that by moving from the ritualistic, surface level, letter of the law reading to a real, actual transformation in someone's life. Get what? We read this passage before. How do I know if somebody's born again? A lot of my buddies would say, if they've been baptized. If they've been baptized, they've been born again. It's not what the scripture says. The scripture says that you know if someone has been born again, if everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love. Well, it takes it from the ritualistic, okay, baptized, not baptized. Said the sinner's prayer, didn't say the sinner's prayer. Takes communion every Sunday, doesn't take communion every Sunday. A cappella music, instrumental music, whatever. Hey, I've never committed adultery. I've never committed a murder. It takes it below that to, no, if you love, that's how you know you're born again. Not if you got your hair wet, not if you got dunked under a pool, but if you love. Hey, good job. You never murdered anybody. Okay, that like that puts 99% of us in the good boy, good girl camp. Good little boy, good little girl camp. Have you ever had anger in your heart towards your brother? See, Jesus is telling you that your righteousness needs to exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, but he's moving it from a surface level. He's moving it from a surface level, superficial, letter of the law thing to the spirit and the intent behind the law. So, anyways, that's what's up there. That's what I think. And so I do think I don't think he's talking about imputed righteousness in Matthew 5. Oh, let's see, where is it at? There we go. I think that interpretation, although it is true, right? I mean, our righteousness does exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees because it is an imputed righteousness. I don't think that's what Jesus was getting at in Matthew 5, right? That seems to skip understanding the passage in light of the chapter, the context, and instead it skips to another author in another book who is writing to a different group of people trying to accomplish a different purpose, right? That's my 2 cents anyways. You don't have to accept that. That's just how I see it. I love being reminded every day of how little I really know about the Bible. Mean that in a great way. I appreciate your answer. Opened it up. Thanks. Much more sense. I appreciate that, man. Glad to help out in whatever way I can. Okay, Alan Weinstein. Why is John Hagee raising $10 million to fly Jews from Ukraine to Israel to save them? John Hagee doesn't seem interested in saving their souls. He never mentioned our fellow Christians in Ukraine. Yeah, I've never listened to John Hagee before, so I don't have that problem. I don't know why he's. I don't know why he's not interested in helping fellow Christians in Ukraine. I wonder if he counts the Eastern Orthodox Church as Christians. I mean, I have no idea. I just wonder if he does, because aren't most Ukrainians Eastern Orthodox? I know my tradition wouldn't have counted them as Christians, but I don't think they would have. And maybe if they studied them more, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why he's doing that. That's beyond me. All right, what else you got? Any other questions or complaints? Oh, yeah, it's a big commercial? Oh, wow. Well, hey, at least you tried there, Alan. That's all you can do. It's probably just built into that premillennial, the world's about to end stuff, so we gotta get the Jews back to Jerusalem. Two very simple questions. What are the best arguments against once saved, always saved? Was the book of Luke written with people's names before the foundation of... Wait. The book of like. No, the book of life. All right, there we go. Well, it said like. I promise. That's... was the book of like written with people's names? That's why I corrected it to Luke. Then I read people's names and was like, okay, now that doesn't make sense. Okay, was the book of life? There we go. Was the book of life written with people's names before the foundation of the world, or were the names written as time goes on, or is there no book at all? Good questions. I don't call those simple questions. The best argument against once saved, always saved? I guess it depends on what you mean by once saved, always saved. I asked a buddy that one time. He asked me if I believed in once saved, always saved. I was like, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, I believe if you're a Christian and you try to just live a, good life, that you don't have really anything to worry about. I was like, what about like people who just stop believing in Jesus or whatever? He's like, oh, no, not that. I don't believe that. So once he defined once saved, always saved, I was like, I can, I can dig that. Okay, was the book of life like written with people's names? I don't think so. And the reason is because when you start using the words book and write in you know, in like about something that's a spiritual thing and not a physical thing, it stops making sense. You know what I mean? So I don't think there's like a literal book with people's names in it. I think that I think instead it's just a general expression talking about those who are members of God's covenant community. So I don't believe that specific individuals were chosen before the foundation of the world. No. I mean, with the exceptions of maybe people like Paul or Jeremiah, who specifically said that they were chosen in the mother's womb. But even that could be looked at as hyperbole or as talking about the need for them to do their mission. So I don't know. Alan, do you believe the man of sin is going to be one person? Because I don't, and I'm having a hard time explaining it to somebody. Aha. Aha. I don't believe that it was one person. Let me show you this. Yeah, it depends on definition of Christian or saved. Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's see. 2 Thessalonians 2. Let's take a look. Now I request you, brethren, with regard to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, that you not be quickly shaken from your composure, or be disturbed, either by spirit, or a message, or a letter as if from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Let no one any way deceive you, for it will not come unless the apostasy comes first, and the man of lawlessness is revealed, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes his seat in the temple of God. He takes his seat in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God. Do you not remember that while I was still with you, I was telling you these things? And you know what restrains him now, so that in his time he will be revealed. Now notice what he says. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains will do so until he's taken out of the way. So, you look at this passage, and one thing seems abundantly clear to me. And that is, he says, you know what restrains him now, which means he was already being restrained at the time that Paul wrote 2 Thessalonians, and the mystery of lawlessness was already at work. So whoever or whatever the man of sin was, he was already active and around at the time that Paul wrote the letter to the Thessalonians. So the question that you asked, do you believe the man of sin is going to be? I don't believe the man of sin is going to be anything, because I believe that he already was something. I believe that Paul is dealing with a character within his day. Now, as for the identity of the man of sin as an individual or as a group, I believe that the spirit of the mystery of lawlessness refers to a group, but that the man of sin could be the personification of that group in one individual, but it's not necessarily limited to one individual. In other words, what I mean is there was a face that they put up. By they, I mean the zealots in the first century. I'm not gonna. If you want to get into that, I got a commentary on 2 Thessalonians that you can get on my website for free. Click on resources, and you can get that commentary for absolutely free. 1st and 2nd Thessalonians in a PDF. And I believe it was the zealots in the first century that rebelled against Rome and brought Jerusalem down, burned the temple and everything, and that they put up a guy to be the face of the zealots as the high priest, a usurper who did not come from one of the families from which the high priest was traditionally picked. And that's why it says that he sat himself in the temple of God, displaying himself as being God, etc., etc. They took over the law and all these sorts of things. And so what you have is the spirit of lawlessness, the mystery of lawlessness refers to the general zealot movement, I believe. But the man of sin would be the basically the personification of that, whether that is an individual or a group of individuals. But anyways, that's tend to how I look at it. I don't think there's a way to prove that to somebody, that it's a single person or a group of people, but because it is kind of figurative language, you know. So I don't think there's a way to prove it. That's just my view from studies that I've done independently. So there you go. So I don't believe it's going to be anybody. I think he was already somebody. I think that somebody has already been dealt with by Jesus. Now, I believe that people can have that same spirit of lawlessness and get themselves into a lot of trouble and do a lot of harm and meet, their end because of that. But I don't believe that that this passage is talking about somebody in our future. In fact, John said that the Antichrist was already present. Hey, that might actually be a passage for you. I just thought about 1 John chapter 2, verse 18. He says, "Children, it is the last hour." Been the last hour for 2,000 years, I guess. "And just as you heard the Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have appeared. From this we know that it is the last hour." So if you want to substitute the man of sin, you know that the man of sin is coming. Even now many men of sin have appeared. From this we know that it is the last hour. So that could be a passage you could use. Antichrists is plural, with the Antichrist being sort of the personification of all of them, or like the one that was sort of the head of it, I guess. All right. Some thoughts on that. What else you got? We got, how long have we been going? 42 minutes. What other questions, concerns? Yes, Paul's letter to the Thessalonians. Fantastic book. Oh boy. One of the best. Oh, oh man. Let's see. What else we got here? Make sure I didn't miss any questions. If y'all ain't got nothing else, I'm gonna hop off. Go give me a Gatorade. The mark is spiritual, right? Or not. My friend still believes it may be a chip. Okay. All right. Let me talk about the mark of the beast. I'm going to talk about the mark of the beast without talking about the mark of the beast. The test of a prophet, Deuteronomy 18 tells us, is as follows. Let me just read it for you straight out the scripture. Okay. Here's what he says. "The prophet who speaks a word presumptuously in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or which he speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. You should not say it. You may say in your heart, how will we know the word which the Lord has not spoken?" Here we go. This is what I meant to read. "When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken." Let me read it again. "When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken." Now, your friend is worried about chips, microchips. You can get a little, what's it called, RFID chip. Get it implanted in your, the froggy portion of your thumb there. And if you got a phone, like a smartphone or whatever, or like a watch deal, you can do Apple Pay and get your phone to be read by the little payment console there wirelessly. And so some people are like, "Oh, dude, cool, that's pretty neat. If I get a chip put into my thumb, I can just wave it. These are not the droids you're looking for, right? And pay for my stuff that way." In fact, I saw a guy who did that to unlock his car. He built like a whole computer deal and stuck it up in the door, and he was able to unlock his car while waving his hand. It's crazy. I wouldn't do it. I hate needles and stuff like that, but still kind of cool. Anyway, some people think that that's going to be the mark of the beast, that you'll be demanded to put one of those, and you can't buy or sell anything unless you have one of those chips. Here's the problem. Look at Revelation chapter 1. Revelation 1:1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his bondservants the things which must soon take place. Verse 3. Blessed is he who reads and those who hear the words of the prophecy and heed the things which are written in it, for the time is near. Revelation 22. It's not just at the front, it's also at the end. He says, the things which must soon take place. You see that? Verse 6. I'm coming quickly. Verse 7. For the time is near. Verse 10. I'm coming quickly. Verse 12. I'm coming quickly. Verse 20. Now, the sign of a prophet is, as we saw a second ago, when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. Follow me? Was John telling the truth that these things would soon take place? Was John telling the truth that the time was near? Was Jesus telling the truth when he said, I'm coming quickly? Was the angel telling the truth when he said these things must soon take place? Was the angel telling the truth when he said that the time was near? What is near? What is quickly? What is soon? It ain't 2,000 years. I don't think so. I think this book was about things that were happening within their day concerning their time. They were being persecuted, they were being afflicted, and they were promised relief with the book of Revelation. That being said, they didn't have microchips in the first century. They didn't have computer chips. So any interpretation that is that doesn't fit within that doesn't make any doesn't honor the text, I don't believe, and makes John out to be a false prophet. Okay. The being prevented from buying and selling is why he thinks it is future. How was the not buying and selling fulfilled? Okay, so there's a couple different interpretations of that, depending on who you ask. Basically, it depends on if you identify the beast as Rome or as the Zealots. It's complicated. But anyways, basically, during the first century, if someone didn't bow down to Caesar, they wouldn't be allowed to buy or to sell, right? They wouldn't be allowed to have the privileges of living and eating and being able to go to the marketplace. And same thing with the Zealots, allegedly, that they would not allow someone to be within, have a comfortable life in Jerusalem if they didn't bow down to their will and rebel against Rome with them. And so some people had to eat. I mean, this is a terrible thing, but there's an account in Josephus of one woman even having to eat her own child because she had no food. So terrible situation. But I think that's how that passage was fulfilled. Joan says, I'm trying to show this to a dear friend. They keep saying that God's time is different than ours. Thank you so much for that, Joan. Oh, I got you, Alan. I wasn't sure. When you said going to be, I thought it was, I was confused there for a second. Sorry about that. Thanks for the clarification. Joan, here's something for you here. Look at Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to cast some of you into prison, so that you will be tested, and you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. God lives outside of time. I understand that. But he operates within time, and he gives And when he gives a timeline on promises and blessings, that's not going to be flexible unless he says otherwise. He gave Abraham a timeline of how long it would take for his people to come back to the promised land. He gave Daniel a timeline of when the kingdom would be established in Daniel chapter 2, and in Daniel chapter 7, and in Daniel chapter 9. In Daniel chapter 12, he said, seal up the book, for the time is not for your time. It's going to be far off. Oh, thank you so much, Alan. I appreciate that a lot. I appreciate that. And so when God knows how to say something's afar off, we accept it. But suddenly when he says something's near, we no longer accept it. Joan, so there's just a few ideas there for you of how to communicate that to your friend. But Revelation 2:10, you're about to suffer. The devil's about to cast some of you into prison so that you will be tested. You will have tribulation. I will give you a crown of life. 5 different times in one verse, he's emphasizing this is happening to you. To allow the persecution passages to be true about their immediate future without the relief passages also being true is to make John into a liar, giving them promise of relief without it actually being true. Hey guys, persecution's about to happen, but don't worry, you're about to receive relief. Oh, well, actually, the persecution was about to happen, but you're not going to receive relief for 2,000 years because people want these passages to be talking about them and not about you guys. So, that's a harsh way to put it, kind of being snarky a little bit. But you get the trying to do that to make the point, right? All right. Been going for 52 minutes. Anything else? Anything at all? Well, good stream, guys. Thank you so much for your questions. I do appreciate it a lot. I'll kind of hang out for just a few more seconds to make sure. But if not, I'm going to get me a drink. Probably going to work on a little riding or something, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Y'all have a good one.